Welcome back to Wise Tech for Wise Money, the show where we explore the tools and strategies that help build lasting wealth and impact. Today's episode is Preserving Wealth with Sound Money, inside Alpine Gold Exchange with Mark Hilton. I'm your host, Gary Wayne, founder of A1 Solutions International. I've spent 35 years plus across capital markets, trading, derivatives, funds, M&A, and consultancy. And today I help financial operators scale with precision growth systems, data-driven marketing, and AI-enabled operations. Our podcast is in equal parts education, marketing, and relationship building. We spotlight operators doing real work and hope to learn from their expertise. Today we're excited to introduce our guest, Mark Hilton of Alpine Gold Exchange. Founded in 2012, Alpine Gold emerged in response to the Utah Legal Tender Act of 2011, working alongside the United Precious Metals Association to pioneer the circulation and use of precious metal legal tender. From a small subleased office, Alpine has grown to 9 national branches across 6 states, expanded assets under management more than 2,000-fold, and today serves over 50,000 UPMA members. In 2019, they introduced Goldbacks, making spendable gold a practical reality. Mark, welcome today. Please introduce yourself and share how Alpine Gold came to be.
Okay, thank you, Gary. It's wonderful to be here. So my name is Mark Hilton. I've been the president here of Alpine Gold Exchange since 2021. So it's been in existence since 2012, as you said, Gary. And my involvement really came just after the launch of the Goldback currency, where we split the companies out, and so they needed some more management to come in and help with that split. But it's been great. I've seen a huge increase, a lot of it as a result of the success of Goldback, but also I think just of the model that we're providing to the market. And my background, real quick, is I'm a trained engineer with a business degree as well, and I've been involved in product management, business unit management, aerospace engineering. I've been in a number of different industries, but I've been in this financial space now for the last 5-6 years. So that's kind of a quick overview, and it's great to be here with you, Gary.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. The Utah Legal Tender Act of 2011 was sort of probably the thing that, instigated the growth of Alpine, or the start of Alpine. How did that shape the mission and the structure of the company?
Well, that was really the impetus. The founder of our company was involved in drafting that legislation, and so after it was passed, there was a feeling that there was going to be this upswelling of the use of precious metals as money, certainly in the state of Utah and elsewhere. And so we founded, or this company was founded. The actual name is North American Monetary Exchange. Alpine Gold is our sort of marketing name. So it was founded and actually started much slower than I think the founders anticipated. They didn't maybe realize the lack of understanding that the general population has around gold as money, because it had been 50 years since gold was really even backing monetary instruments. So it started kind of slow, and it was self-funded, sort of, town halls, cottage meetings in the community, word of mouth, and it was really done almost as a side project up until probably 2015, where there a lot of energy started going into it. Some more employees came on board, some additional funding was brought in, and we were really able to start building out the platform. And so we've seen pretty good growth since that time. As you mentioned, since I've been involved, it's increased in probably revenue 8 to 10 fold. A lot of interest, a lot of members coming in terms of what we're doing. But that's kind of our founding was really based on this idea that gold and silver should be able to be used as money in addition to just a hedge against inflation or a store of value.
From those early days, what do you think fueled the growth?
Well, I think in general, this whole thing really started with a presidential election by a fellow named Ron Paul in the United States. He didn't win the election, but he brought to the debate the monetary strength of or weakness of the fiat monetary system. And so he brought a lot of these issues up to people, such as our founder and others that got involved. And so a lot of people started thinking about these things. They said, how, because we just kind of take money for granted without really thinking about, how it works, what makes it go up, what makes it go down. People are just frustrated when they see inflation. They don't really understand why it's happening necessarily. So there's been kind of this upswelling grassroots effort to educate people, and I think that's where a lot of the effort, at least in our company, started was really in education. And then as people saw that, they decided to take a chance. And it's tough with a new company that says I want to hold your gold for you. I want to sell you gold and vault it and allow you to spend it. It takes a little bit of education, and so that was quite a bit of the effort. And there was a few folks that were really passionate about it that really helped get the word out. Yeah, it was a very local growth thing right around Alpine, Utah, in sort of central Utah here where we are. That's where most of the growth started. I will say that there was in fact, one of the earliest employees was a college student who saw what was happening. He was a political science major, kind of interested in money, and he wrote a blog on what Alpine Gold was doing, and it got about 20,000 hits within over a weekend, and probably quadrupled or almost 10x the amount of calls that were coming in just from that one marketing effort that was done by a non-employee. It was just a blog from somebody that was interested, and that individual is Jeremy Corden. He's actually was one of the founders of Goldback. So he ended up coming in and joining Alpine Gold because he really loved what they were doing, and had the ability to really get that message out in a more broad way through. He's a young man, in college, so kind of a different approach to getting the word out. And so I would say that was in 2015. And that's where and then he was able to join. He helped bring in some financing, and that's probably really where the turning point was for the company.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, you say preserving purchasing power through sound money is central to your model. Why is that, and what makes you say that?
In terms of preserving value, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, gold, silver, and precious metals have the ability of not losing their value. We tend to look at them, and you have to look over a relatively long period of time. But just take for many years, we'll say if you chart this and you go back when the dollar was backed by gold and it was, there wasn't a lot of movement. It was a fairly fixed exchange rate. When we went and sort of got off the gold standard I'm speaking U.S. here now. I know your audience is international, but in the United States, a lot of people probably know this. In 1971, Richard Nixon said that we're closing the gold window, which basically meant you cannot exchange dollars for gold, at the central bank anymore. But assured everybody it was a temporary measure, and not to worry that the dollar was strong. And so from that point, we've seen probably a 95% devaluation of the dollar relative to gold. So the exchange rate back then was $35 to $35 per ounce, and we know today it's over 4,000. So it's been a 100-fold change in those 60 years or so.
It's amazing.
So that's the preservation idea. If you'd held gold that whole time, you could say, well, I'm extremely wealthy, but in reality, you could buy about the same amount of stuff with a gold ounce back then as you can today. And so it's not that you've actually gotten wealthier, it's just you've avoided becoming poor by holding on to and just investing in dollar-based assets only.
Well, what is a gold bank? Before I spoke to you previously, I'd never heard of it before. Maybe you explain to the audience, who I'm sure a lot won't know, what a gold bank is.
I just spent my last Goldback. I would love to show you folks, but I'd say go to alpinegold.com and you'll see a nice little video. It essentially looks like a note, a dollar bill. It's a flexible product that has a certain amount of gold built into it, and there's essentially it's a vacuum deposition process. So you have a substrate, and inside of a sort of deep space vacuum, gold is liberated through electron bombardment, and it attaches in a vacuum, to the substrate, and then another substrate is placed on top of that. So it's essentially a sandwich cut up into pieces, and it's very accurate in terms of the amount of gold that can be placed on that substrate in that process. It's kind of a semiconductor technology, similar to what you would do to gold plate, but it's not a rolled product. It's actually sort of rained on there. It's a whole currency system where you have different amounts of gold. The base unit is 1/1000th of a troy ounce, 24 karat gold, and that's in the one Goldback. There's also a half Goldback. There's a 2. There's a 5, a 10, a 25, 50, and 100 denominations, and there are different series that are in different United States, states like Florida, Utah, and so forth. That's really just artwork. It's more marketing than anything, because it's completely interchangeable. It can be used for transactions. People use this to buy and sell goods and services, and there's been about 200 million units manufactured and distributed.
Does it only come in gold, or is it in silver as well?
There is a silver back, but it's just, given the technology, it's difficult to, the cost of putting it on there is not insignificant. When you put gold on there, you're adding a lot of value with the gold, but there is a premium on the product because of the manufacturing cost. So it's about a 92% premium over spot. Now that's redeemable. We'll get into that more, but it's has to do with the cost of making it. So when you do silver, the premium would be, thousands. There's probably 4 cents of silver that can be placed on one of these, and then the cost of building it would be, several dollars. So it's going to be an order of magnitude less efficient of a tool. So they're used for collectibles, really. So we do have silverbacks. Actually, I might have one here. Let's see if I've got one in my drawer. They're beautiful, and they're no, I don't have one here. Sorry, but basically, it's not currency. The gold back is what is used for currency.
Okay, you have a gold bank, and they have core offerings, gold and silver accounts,
Right.
and US legal tender coins. How do members actually use these accounts?
Yeah, so you kind of think of it like a bank. It's not really a chartered bank, but it's it's kind of like the way people thought banks should work, many years ago, where you have gold backing, and so you can put your gold in there. You own it. You own the silver or gold backs. We have three different types of accounts, and you can essentially either just vault it and leave it there and let it, just maintain its value. You can spend it by transferring it to other account holders, or you can borrow against it, and you can get U.S. dollars loaned to you based on the value of gold that you have, or precious metals that you have in your accounts. You can also lease it. So the leasing is a way to increase or to gain a real return on gold. So increase the amount of ounces of gold or silver that you have by leasing it to us initially, and then we lease it out to mostly the precious metals supply chain. There's many companies that want to take out debt in precious metals because their revenue is correlated with the price of that asset. So, people can get a 2 or a 3% return in the amount of gold. It's paid in right into their account as gold or silver. So those are some of the ways that people use it. There's an individual retirement accounts that you can have some tax benefits. There is a debit card that you can load. So it's linked to your account, and you can actually either liquidate onto that as you need it to purchase, or you can just borrow again and have it loaded onto that card. So there's a number of different methods that people can use.
Is there a digital wallet, or is that a digital wallet?
It's not a digital wallet. It's an actual prepaid debit card of Visa.
Right.
So it's just a Visa card that has cash on it, but it's just a mechanism that we can, what we try to tell people is don't leave a lot of cash in a bank account, because it's going to devalue over time. So leave it in gold or silver. And when you need it, you can either borrow against it and pay it back, or you can, for a very low interest rate, it's like 2.5%. Is what people are paying on that, because it's a secured loan, or so it gets loaded on there, and it can be loaded on certain trigger points. Like, you can say when it gets below $1,000 and put another 1,000 on there, and then you can use it to buy groceries and things. We of course also try to. We're out recruiting merchants so that they will accept these metals as gold, either digitally through our system or physically. And we do have some partners who are digitizing these and creating tokens. And so in that case, we're basically the back end vault, and these are stable coins that are backed by gold, silver, or gold backs. And so we also have that. That's typically something a partner would do, not something that we do ourselves.
Stable coins, you mentioned that. I spoke to someone the other day who thinks eventually currency will almost disappear and stable coins will take over.
Yeah, that's possible. And but again, what are you backing it on? What's making it stable? So if it's tied to the dollar, it's no better than the dollar, right? If it's tied to some other asset like gold, then it's going to be as good as gold. If assuming you trust all that technology. There's a lot of folks I think that are still a little bit suspicious of the whole thing,
Sure.
and they prefer to own it themselves and be able to access it. And so our model is hold it, you know where it is. Um, you know, you can convert it to tokens if you want to, but if it's a stable coin, it's not like you're going to get these spectacular returns that you're seeing with Bitcoin or spectacular losses that people are seeing in crypto. It's a highly speculative market right now, and it's not really stable enough to use as a currency. As you move to stable coins, things backed by gold, I agree. It's a very, very low friction method. So we definitely support that, and we're working with a number of partners to enable that, but to make sure that it's really stable and it's stable based on gold or goldbacks or silver or something like that.
If that happens, we've gone full circle. So we've gone from the dollar being pegged against gold to unpegging everything, and then stable coins come in and become a main source of currency as such, backed by gold. We're back to where we were 200 years ago.
That's right. I think it'd be
Unbelievable.
fantastic. Yeah, and that's a way to really take technology and leverage what we know from the past in a very elegant way. And so we definitely support that idea.
What other services are there? Gold IRAs, pawning services.
Yeah, so the pawning is basically a loan, so you're basically using your gold as collateral, and we can get we can give you dollars because the reality is 99% of merchants don't accept gold, as payment, right? Maybe
No.
it's more than that. We've recruited about 3,000 in the United States so far that will accept it, and that is going up all the time. But there's hundreds of thousands of merchants, if not millions, certainly worldwide. So that that loaning is still very important. We're trying to make it so people can actually spend the gold directly without having to convert it back to paper money. We call it paper money, fiat. The reason for that is really it's just an anomaly of the tax code, at least here in the United States, and I don't know about in the UK. I'd be interested to find out. But the irony is, let's say you have a gold dollar, it's legal tender in the United States, and but the way that the tax revenue board looks at this, they measure everything in Federal Reserve notes, which is people call the dollar. But in the United States, there's 5 different types of legal tender. There's gold dollar, silver dollar, the platinum dollar, the paper dollar, which we think of as the dollar, and then there's base coinage like quarters and dimes and things like that. And those last two kind of work together. And if you read the legal code, the treasurer is supposed to keep those values between the different types of dollars in parity, equal. But they, of course, has not been the case. They're extremely biased. So and that's because of excess printing, right? So the money supply for the U.S. dollar has increased drastically compared to gold. So the point I guess I'm getting at is if you are holding gold dollars, even though the legal tender, and you convert it back to paper dollars, federal note, there's going to be a difference, and it's going to be a positive number. You're going to have more paper dollars now than when you purchased it, most likely. The government will then come and want to tax that and call it a capital gain, when in reality, it's an inflation tax because the dollar has been debased. They now have moved relative to
Sure.
one another. They take that difference, that becomes a taxable thing, which is, in our view, ridiculous because it still is legal tender. It's money. I'm holding it. It's minted by the United States Mint. These gold dollars and silver dollars. And so if you can spend it as gold dollars directly, then you don't have that capital gain. So let me give you a real world example. Okay, I'm sitting here in my home. Right over here, we just put on a new addition in our homes, so a room. I was able to negotiate with the majority of our contractors to accept gold directly. So they opened an account with us. I paid them in gold, and the benefit, or gold backs is actually what I used. The benefit to me was, since I had purchased those gold backs, they had more than doubled in value. And so had I converted those to paper dollars, I would have had to pay 28% capital gains tax on half of the value, right? Because it had doubled. Say it went from
Yeah.
100 to 200. So I would have had $100 gain. I would pay $28 on that. So it's a pretty major savings that I had by paying them in gold. Now, they turned around, in many cases they converted it back to paper, but because I had paid it in gold and they received it in gold on that day and converted it, the exchange rate used to calculate their capital gains was based on what they received it at on that day, or the week before. Now, many of them are holding it. They like the idea of keeping gold, but that's a way to save huge amounts of capital gains taxes in a very legal, ethical way. And so that's what we try to do, is provide opportunities for our members to be able to spend their gold without having to convert it back to the fiat system.
It's fantastic. I think you're going to have to open up in the UK, aren't you?
Well, we do have there's a Goldback distributor out there. I forget the name of them, but you can buy Goldbacks there. You can also open an account in our, from the UK, and we'll hold it for you, and you can basically do all the same things. But I don't think we'll have a branch there anytime soon. But
You've got 3,000 merchants. How did you get them, and how are you expanding your merchant base?
So it's a great question. I mean, it's hard work. You have to go talk to each one, and usually these are smaller merchants. These are sole proprietors who will, if you can. We found that if you can actually get and talk to the owner of a business, say this is the guy who owns the barber shop, or the tax return, the accountant, or there's a hardware store down the street that we use a lot that accepts goldbacks. If you can talk to them, we've seen about 50%. If you can have a chance to explain it to them, 50% will say, "Sure, why wouldn't I accept gold? That sounds great." And so it's, we motivate. We have a set of folks that we call authorized partners. We have a referral program, so there's a little bit of commission for them when they are able to, sign up one of these merchants. So that's really how we've done it. We're now getting, and that initially we focused on physical acceptance of goldbacks. Now we're moving towards a digital model where within our platform we have a marketplace. This is we call it our AGX portal. It's basically you can think of it as the banking platform. We have a marketplace with merchants who have come in, they've created accounts, and they're basically saying, we will accept gold, silver, or goldback in payment for our products. And there's like a website that's linked, so people can go shopping directly on our site, and if they find something they like, they can pay for that in precious metals directly. So we're trying to grow that out. It's relatively new. We probably have a couple hundred merchants in that platform. But the pitch to the merchant really is it's a number of things. You can avoid paying Visa fees. Many people are paying 3% anytime somebody pays with a credit card. We have this referral program, so if if a merchant actually advertises or is able to get some of their customers to open accounts with us and purchase precious metals, there's a small commission that they'll get as a result. So they can actually turn a cost into a revenue stream. So that's very attractive to merchants, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And so because for many of them on very thin margins, that 3% that they're paying Visa is pretty substantial.
Oh, it's crippling, and that's why a lot of people won't use American Express
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
charges are so high.
debit cards. Yeah, so people are trying to get away from those, or they'll have a cash discount or something, right? So that's really how the merchant program's working. It's something that we're really starting to focus on more, is building out the merchants and putting all the marketing together that would help communicate that.
Sure. Moving on to legal and regulatory framework, state versus federal roles in US legal tender, how Utah led other states and other states led and other states followed. What about Alpine structures, how you structure accounts as trusts, and what this means for privacy, beneficiaries, and probate avoidance?
Yeah, so we every account is a trust. So it's set up by a trust company, which is a huge benefit in and of itself. It doesn't cost anything. If you go pay a lawyer to create a trust for you, it's probably a couple £1,000, I would think, or more. Depends on how complicated it is. So we give everybody a boilerplate trust, and it's really designed for holding precious metals. You can have beneficiaries. There's a lot of benefits of trust law in the United States in terms of privacy. So, in the United States, at least, if any bank account over $600, I think, has to be reported to the federal government, and so they're
Really? $600?
$600. Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's no privacy at all. The government wants to look at everything, your entire economic life, and that's fine. But people who want privacy and they just want to maintain their wealth and so forth, the trust structure has always been a very valuable way to go. So that's what we've leveraged is a trust, and we do have the ability. We have an associated law firm and trust company that can actually modify a trust for you. That you do have to pay for. It's not very expensive, but it's you can pay. In fact, they're a merchant. They'll accept gold dollars, right, in payment for legal fees, as an example. So you can add certain stipulations to a trust if you want to. You can also put your house in that same trust. I've done that myself, where I put my primary residence in my Alpine Gold Trust. So that's kind of the structure that we have. It gets to be pretty complicated when you get into this with money transmission laws and what we can and can't do. So we leverage the trust law, which provides privacy and enables us to do all the types of things we want to offer to the market in a very very straightforward way.
It's quite intricate, quite complex.
Yeah, well, it was founded and structured by the same individual that founded this company is a lawyer, and so looked at all these different ways it could be structured, looked at money transmission, the cost and the regulatory oversight for that compared to a trust structure, and decided that the trust structure made the most sense and provided the kind of privacy and the benefits that people wanted to see. You mentioned probate, so there's that's one advantage of trust is you can have beneficiaries tied to that trust. So what we do is we just have any beneficiary open an account with us, even if they don't have any balance, and then we attach that to the main trust that has the assets. So upon the death of the trustee or the owner of those precious metals, we can automatically transfer in whatever percentages or proration that's been designated in the trust. We'll just transfer those funds to those beneficiaries. So it's very clean and simple. You don't have to go through complex probate court, which can get really messy and create a lot of animosity amongst the beneficiaries and so forth. So that's another big advantage.
In general, custody, auditing and settlement, how do you ensure clients retain ownership while putting the assets to work?
So what we do is we have obviously strong contracts with all of our lessees. These are the folks who would lease from us, and so they have to have insurance on all of their on all of the assets that are held there. We require regular audits by third-party auditors. We look at the risk of the business itself. So we'll do a due diligence to make sure, they're not financially distressed. And we will, they don't have legal title to any of it, so it's not on their balance sheet. They cannot use it for settling of any sort of debt. It needs to be kept in the form of precious metals. So there's a number of restrictions that we require contractually with all of our lessees. I won't say it's zero risk, but it's very low risk. We've been doing this for quite some time, and it's working out really well. The safest thing is just leave it in a secure vault, but then you won't get a return. So that's why we let people make their own choice. In the banking system today, I think we all know that if you deposit money into the bank now puts that on their balance sheet. They own it, and you become a creditor for your own money. And you're not the first in line as well. If the bank is distressed or fails, they'll pay off their debtors before they pay you off your own money. Now there are insurances. There's the FDIC, but that only really insures 2% of total deposits, 1% to 2%. So with a catastrophic failure banking system, you could, there are cases where people have lost their money. So that's what also draws a lot of people to us, because if you leave it in the vault, it's 100% reserves. A bank has to hold about 5 to 10% reserves legally through the charter. And then they can put it to use any way they want, and they don't have to tell you, get your approval on how they're doing it. In our case, we have a contract. We say exactly what we're going to do with it, and it's an optional thing for the owner of the metal. They may just say, and it's about 1/3 of our assets are out in leases. So it means 2/3 people just like, I don't want it. I don't want to get a return on that. I'd rather just leave it in the vault, and that's totally fine with us. We do charge a vaulting fee in that case, but it's relatively small. It's about it's 1/4% per year for gold and 0.5% for silver.
I can see how your contract and the way you operate has obviously built a lot of credibility. With 9 branches across 6 states and counting, where's the demand strongest today?
Well, I think we're seeing. I mean, it's we all started in Utah. 3 of those are in Utah. We probably do, 30% of our business in the state of Utah, and then I would say the next is. It's actually not even what you might think it would be in a state that we have a branch, but it's not necessarily. It'd be like California, Texas. Those are just huge states, and they use our systems, but they just do it like any online bank, right? You don't physically have to be here to benefit. The reason we have the branches is to be able to build up local communities and merchants around the branches, to provide a location so people on the East Coast don't feel like if I ever need to go get my gold and something breaks down and there's, I can't securely have it transported, do I have to drive to all the way, to Utah? So we have one in Florida and one in New Hampshire, and both of those are doing very well. Um, it just allows us to create visibility. When people see that you've got something kind of close to them, they're more willing to take you seriously as opposed to, oh, this is just a Utah thing, and so I live in New York City, I could care less about
No.
Utah, right? But if you got one up in New Hampshire, which is just like an hour drive away, then you're more likely to think about it. Um,
What's what's the next frontier outside of the US?
well, we're looking at well, obviously we're continuing to build up the U.S., but we are looking at Latin America a lot because Latin Americans know what inflation is. They they've
Yeah,
lived it, right, and
3 or 4,000% plus.
exactly. So they are extremely motivated to find a solution to maintain their value. I lived in Latin America myself, lived in Argentina for a while, and I saw what people would do. They would, back in those days, they would run out as soon as they got their check, and either they would do one of three things. They would try to convert it to dollars, and there was only so much they could convert, and if they couldn't get dollars, they would go buy their all their groceries and try to get hard assets. And if they couldn't do that, they would try to buy some other commodity that would keep its value. And that can be a number of things, but a lot of the folks I knew would buy bricks, literally, just like in your background there. They would pile them in their backyard or in their house because bricks you could resell apparently, and they kept their value. So it just had an interesting. That's what people are looking for, right? Anything doesn't have to be gold, but gold just is the most. It's just the easiest thing to use. It doesn't corrupt. You can store it securely. With the digitization now of gold through blockchains or through like our trust platform, it can be very secure. So it's essentially the same thing as going out and buying bricks and putting them somewhere that you try to be safe. So Latin America is of interest from that reason. Um, Western Europe a little bit less so because honestly, Western Europe is a lot like it's a lot like the U.S., but maybe even more trusting of government. A lot more socialized kind of government structures, and people just kind of trust in the monetary system. So it's harder to make the case for sound money.
What about for families and small businesses? What's the sensible first step into sound money?
Well, I think yeah, if you have a small business, you could certainly become a merchant. You could um, you know advertise it to your local to your clients, tell them the benefits of doing it. We have the ability to have a QR code where you can you can pay over your phone in gold. Um, but I think just start small. I think people just take a little bit of your savings that and force yourself to save and put some of that. You can just automatically do it. We have a recurring deposit capability where you can just set up a link to your bank and say, I'm going to do $100 or 100 euros or pounds per month, and just let it accumulate. I'd recommend you put it into a lease because you're gonna accelerate that, um, and uh, and then look for ways that you can also build out a community of folks that would recognize it, and you can create a little sort of gold-based economy in a microcosm in your area where it makes sense. Now, it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to be a small portion of what you do. But that's where I would start. Just start with your friends, family, associates, If you do have a business with some of your suppliers, talk to them about that. Usually, when you bring up the topic, you explain it, and people they get it, and with companies like ours, we've got a track record of showing how we can reliably provide that benefit to you.
Are you promoting this through financial advisors at all?
We do have some that do this. The challenge with financial advisors, they're so tied into the traditional financial system that, for example, there's the registered investment advisors that are fiduciaries. They and brokers in general. We need the ability to be able to record in a central database all transactions that occur, and they have pretty strict rules on how you plug into those types of systems. So those are things that we are developing, but our current platform and processes don't allow it. So if the broker or if the financial advisor is comfortable just managing these as a separate thing outside of their stocks and bonds that they're normally working, then we definitely have those. So we do have people that are doing it. Like I say, we have what we call authorized partners. These are people who have other jobs, but they also work directly with us, and we help train them, and they reach out to their communities, and some of them are financial advisors that are doing that.
Okay. What do you we're almost done, but what I'm interested to know with what you think the next 3 or 5 years does for the Goldback and gold banks, etc.
Well, on the Goldback itself, so we're, just to be clear, we are a retailer of the Goldback. We used to be owned by the Goldback company. The Goldback was sort of conceived and launched out of our company, but it's now a completely separate company. So we are one of their distributors, one of several hundred distributors. So at least for Goldbacks, their plan is probably 4 times a year they're going to come up with a new series, a new note. So they're building out the portfolio of Goldbacks. From our perspective, we're going to be expanding into some bullion offerings to allow people to really clearly differentiate between more of a savings and a checking account. The savings account, you might want to hold things with low premium, in a bullion type of, just low premium gold or silver. And then as you need it to spend, you can convert it over through our exchange into currency. So we'll have both of those. I expect to see the merchant network expand a lot. There's just a lot of interest in precious metals nowadays. A lot of states are adopting laws that are making it easier to deal with precious metals and recognizing it as a currency. Some of the states are starting to looking at accepting taxes directly in precious metals, so essentially becoming like a merchant. So I think we're just going to continue to see this growth curve in this space.
So it's a fantastic opportunity, really, to put yourself out there. If you could change one thing about how modern finance treats sound money, whether in tax policy, regulation, or market structure, what would it be?
Well, I think I would say just recognize precious metals as money and treat them as such, and don't create these friction and the barriers. It feels like we get punished for trying to make money work again, and so that's what I would ask, is just recognize from those that are kind of entrenched in the traditional, we call it traditional. I would say gold is really the traditional financial system, but the current financial system, which is fiat-based only, which provides lots of flexibility for sure, lots of financial instruments, lots of ways to make money and lose money, but just recognize that there is this category of sound money and support it where it makes sense.
I think very very insightful, very good advice, and I think you're the way to go. Digital currency, too many scams, real money devaluating daily, governments print money, they have no care in the world about people and what that means to the general populace. I definitely think sound money is the way to go. I'd like to thank you today for coming on this show. If people want to find out more about sound money and the Alpine Exchange, how do they get in touch with you, Mark?
Just go to alpinegold.com. There's a contact us right on there. You can, or there's a phone number. So we have staff that'll take phone calls. We take emails. So that's the best way. You can learn a lot about us just by going to alpinegold.com.
That's great. Well, we're going to put this on a podcast. We're going to put it on many, many platforms. So more and more people will learn about sound money and the Alpine Exchange and yourself. In signing off, I'd just like to say I'm Gary Wayne from Wise Tech and Wise Money. Smart decisions today for lasting impact tomorrow. You can find me on LinkedIn or on my by email at GaryA1Solutions.international.com. Thank you very much for listening in. Mark, thanks for attending. You've been a great, great guest.
Thank you very much.